my name is Michael Gaminal, and this is the ABCI Book Club. Today we are discussing icebreakers on Zoom, and I am an ASVAB tutor, so if you're looking for any help getting into the military with the ASVAB, check me out, Gaminal Tutors, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all over the place.
Fantastic. Paula Williams with ABCI. We help aviation companies sell more of their products and services, often using Zoom, hence today's discussion.
John Williams, also with ABCI. I do the business consulting when and if they come in. They do happen occasionally. We don't look for them. And I take care of the back-end processes and things for ABCI.
Excellent. So today we are talking about Zoom icebreakers. It can be very awkward to first talk to people on Zoom and other video hosting platforms. So it's good to, especially with people who aren't on here all that often, to try it out.
Right.
I have an icebreaker that I'd like you guys to try if you're willing. If not, we can just chalk it up as one of the icebreakers. But it is the first thing I do with my students. And this icebreaker is it's the app icebreaker. So it's basically they come up with an app, and I'm thinking about changing it to the Netflix one because of what we've found here today. But you think of an app or a show or whatever, you say 3 reasons why it's a good app, and then you recap telling them they should download the app. And that's it. And this is really good because apps are usually something that people find really easy to talk about. They've heard from their friends that you should download this app, or they know that you should download this app and they explain why. So that sort of thing. So I'm going to go first, and then if you guys are willing, you guys are more than welcome to go after this, but up to you. So my app is Words with Friends. I really, really like Words with Friends. If you guys get a chance, you should definitely download it. The 3 reasons why Words with Friends is a great app to have. 1, it improves your lexicon, which means it can give you more vocabulary, more words to use when you're speaking with other people. So you learn new words, which is great for the ASVAB as well. Number 2, you can play with friends. So you can compete against your buddies, which gives you a little more motivation to hop on, check it out, look at new words, and try to beat your buddies, which is kind of the whole point. And then 3, if you don't have any friends online, you can play against computers. So there's a little story mode that you can work through as well. So those are the 3 reasons that you should download Words with Friends.
Fantastic. Go ahead.
Okay. That's it.
I love this because a lot of people are not used to participating in online discussions. They're used to just watching webinars and just being this passive potato, the couch potato that is not participating. And then when they get put on the spot, they feel weird about it. So you give them something that they feel comfortable with. That's just cool. Anyway, so sure, my favorite app is Canva. I love Canva because you can explain an idea really easily if it's visual. A lot of us are visual learners and so on, and you can do just about anything in terms of building a diagram or an infographic or an ad or something like that conveys a simple idea in a graphical way. The second thing I love about it is it's super simple. It doesn't take a big learning curve. It's not like Photoshop where, it takes you 3 weeks to learn how to use the thing before you can actually do anything with it. You can open Canva and produce something in 15 minutes that's pretty decent. And then the third reason I like Canva is because you can share designs and collaborate on designs with other people. So, as an example, we're working on our posts for the book club for next year. We've got 3 people working on those posts, and we can share that among the 3 of us, and we can try making copies and tweaking the design until we're all happy with it. So that's why I love Canva.
All right.
Well, I'm going to pass, but not because I'm afraid, because I don't use apps on a phone very often. And secondly, on a Mac, which we have here, everything is an app. So I don't really know which one I'd choose for that to be, even if I were to discuss it at length. So back to the facilitator.
And that's good too. I mean, that's important. Like, if you have someone who doesn't want to do the activity, like, you're a perfect example. You explained why you weren't intimidated. So you still get the desired effect, right? You still explain something using this platform. So, you know, I still think it's a good icebreaker, even if not everybody uses it right away. So,
yeah, and you get to know people a little bit better, even if you get to know that they're a person that is not likely to participate in icebreakers. At least they get to know the rest of the group a little bit better, and you learn something about them as well. So that's cool.
True. All right, Mom, what do you got? What's your icebreaker of choice?
There are several. There's a lot of different lists, and I think we're going to share, some links to these lists because a lot of them are better or worse for particular situations, or whether you have a large group or a small group. Mm-hmm. I love the app idea. I think that's a great one. Or the Netflix idea. What is your favorite thing that you watch on Netflix, and 3 reasons why.
And wait until you get the response, what's Netflix?
Nobody's going to do that unless you're talking. And that's another thing. If you've got an international audience, you kind of have to take that into account. So, but a couple of things that I like from the list that I've read, one that I think is really kind of cool is to introduce your pets, kids, or partners. Because a lot of us are working together a lot, and we don't really have a chance to do the water cooler talk and things like that. We don't really get a chance to get to know each other over Zoom the way we would if we were working in an office with people all the time. So, and John and I, with our clients, we spend a lot of time, over the years and things like that. And every once in a while, the doorbell will ring, and Sherry's dog, Darth, who is a Yorkshire Terrier, will go crazy, because the doorbell rang. And, it's just something that happens in meetings, and it's just cool. And, now we've met Darth. Darth is part of the family. We feel like he's part of our client group and everything else. It just makes everything more human and more cool and more fun. So I will share that one. And I guess we can just kind of go around the circle and share a favorite ice-breaking activity. How's that?
Sounds good.
I've been thinking about this, and I tend to try to, rather than use the same one every time, mm-hmm. get cues from whoever I'm looking at or listening to, because you can tell, even on Zoom, if they, Mickey's kind of a hard one because all he's got is a blank wall behind him. But that's because it's a new house. Most people have something back there. That's true. Like Gene's got all kinds of fishing stuff, and you could say that and ask him how he's doing with fishing up there. When's the best time to go get salmon around that area? And that's easy because then he can just start talking, and does.
The conversation piece. I've got a dozen of them, and you've got your helicopter, your Huey back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mickey's got a new house, so that's also a conversation piece.
and in fact, this is nothing more than what you should be doing if and when you ever will. Not you, because you're not going to do this anymore, but when people go for an interview and they get into a guy's office or a girl's office, you walk in, you take a quick glance around and see what's there, because it'll be obvious what their passion is away from work. And all you got to do is say, oh, what's your handicap? See a golf bag in the corner or a golf trophy. Mm-hmm. And get started. And what courses do you play? I mean, it's just easy thing to do. And that's a real good icebreaker, is to figure out, but looking, what people do.
Nice.
That's nifty.
I like that one a lot. I think that's it's a lot more targeted. It's kind of like I feel like it's a sales tactic, right? Like it is. Say when you walk into, like if I'm a vacuum salesman and I walk into the little lady's house and I'm like, oh, look at your, you got 4 kids. Wow. Which one plays football or what? It kind of takes me to like that kind of mindset where you're looking around to see what common ground you have, which is really more like about making friends too, so.
Right.
Not necessarily limited just sales. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Nice. I like that one of these icebreakers wasn't like a strict icebreaker in the sense of the word. But I feel like we should have some honorable mentions. I think Netflix is a really good one.
Yeah.
Like anybody could talk about Netflix for hours. You know, have you seen blank? And even if they haven't seen it 9 times out of 10, they'll have an opinion on it. And that's easy for the reverse reason of what John was talking about, because it explains about yourself and then it gives them an opportunity to react to something that's interesting to you. So it's like saying, check out my golf trophy almost.
Yeah.
On the other side, I would think.
Another one that I like, you know, for honorable mentions, if we want to do another round or two, the personality inventories. So like the Myers-Briggs or the Strengths Finder or the DISC or, you know, those other kinds of things. And you do that ahead of the meeting, I would think, and then just share the results at the meeting, and just say, you know, this, what are you willing and able to share from your Myers-Briggs or your Strengths Finder or whatever it is that we did this week. And this, I think, would be great with a class or a team or anything else where you're going to have to be working together, and you have to get to know each other. So then you can have everybody take the Myers-Briggs and then share one thing that they agree with about that test and one thing they disagree with about their results from that test. Because I think both of them are pretty revealing in, even if you don't believe in these kinds of tests, you will learn something in the fact that everybody has taken it and then is discussing it. So, you know, even if you take this with a grain of salt, and a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists and people like that do, it still is just an opportunity to talk about what did you learn about yourself that you now know better, or what did you learn about yourself that you totally disagree with? And then everybody else will learn that about you, and you'll learn that about everybody else too.
And then you can take the self-deprecating approach.
Yeah.
You got to be talking to somebody about any topic that you don't think they're uncomfortable with, and you say, "Well, I realize this may be a hassle to talk about, but don't make me pull my hair out. I don't have that much left."
Exactly. Well, and that's another thing. If you're asking them to share, you know, they're not sharing their whole results from their Myers-Briggs. They're just picking one thing to share. So you're not asking anybody to reveal anything that's too personal or too, you know, they're cherry picking their results. So that also tells you something too.
Yeah. Nice. Well, cool. So I think it's important to go back to like the reason for an icebreaker, right?
Yeah.
Like you're trying to break the ice. So the idea here is that you're trying to have a discussion with someone. I think it's good to go back to like the humanity. And I mean, I think that John does that well when he's talking about like, don't let me pull my hair out, you know, like talking about how we're all just humans.
Yeah.
Is so important, right? Like the shortfalls and, you know, the difficulties of getting up in the morning or whatever. I feel like we might get swept up because a lot of the times, at least for me, I'm trying to run a class, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to say like, I am the authority here. This makes perfect sense. You should be keeping up with me. And then like being patient as they try to catch up, right?
Yeah.
And so I sometimes might pump the gas a little bit too hard. And I think that there's a lot to be said for kind of slowing down. Even if you have something that you're trying to get across, like, you know, you're trying to teach them fractions. It's important to go slower with that than you might expect.
Yeah.
You know, and to that point, my first college algebra course, I was sitting in the front row, and I missed something in a book, which is why I harped on you for make sure if you missed something, go figure it out. So he wrote down, I don't remember what it was, either the sine or the integral of the sine or the cosine, one of them. And he wrote down the answer. And I said, "How'd you get that?" And he turned around and wrote down a different form of the same answer. He did it 3 times. And then he said, "What are you, stupid?" Which really irritated me. And, because what I missed was the definition. What he wrote had a definition. If you knew the definition, you knew the answer.
Right.
And I just missed the definition. And he could have said, "Well, by definition," but he didn't. And that was messy. But I can tell you, I learned how not to do things by that
guy. Right. Well, and yeah, I think we all want to pack as much business into a meeting as possible. So there is that intention to let's get it done and get out of here. Because nobody really likes having more meetings or longer meetings. But I think we are missing a lot of the human element, as you say, if we don't take the time at the beginning of the meeting to do an icebreaker. So, you can take 5 or 10 minutes if you've got a meeting of 6 people and do something like this. Another thing I loved, and we did this actually in our book club a while back, is they call it theme days in this list that I'm reading, but everybody wore a hat. And this was actually Jeremy's idea. Everybody wear a hat next time. And it really did humanize the whole meeting, and everybody had a story behind their hat, and everybody had a reason for choosing the hat that they did. And it was just cool, to get to know people on a different level.
Yeah, I agree. I remember that meeting, and that meeting stands out for everybody. I'm sure everybody who showed up remembers that meeting. So that's pretty cool. I think especially if you're going to have multiple meetings with the same group of people, doing something like that's really, really smart. As for just keeping people engaged.
Right.
That's great.
Maybe we should add an icebreaker to our discussion group, have an icebreaker before we launch into the topic.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. A lot of meetings, I know a lot of corporate meetings, one of the things that they try to stress is like, what surprised you this week, or what surprised you about the data this week? And they do that in the beginning to increase serendipity, right? Because if something surprises one person about X, that could be related to a whole nother department about Y.
Yeah.
And like you would never, if you don't ask what surprised you, you would never hear that. You would only hear the business side of it. And it's kind of crazy to think that you can create a habitat where those lucky coincidences are more likely to take off.
Yeah.
I didn't believe it at first. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why? Some people are lucky and other people are unlucky, and that's because of hard work. But a lot of it just comes from intentionally creating these lucky atmospheres where you're just water cooling or, talking about something unrelated, or seemingly unrelated. So
yeah, and being interested and curious in all of that, enough to spend the time to listen to what surprised everyone else, and putting that together in your mind. I think devoting the mind space to that and the time to that is really important. It says a lot about the company too.
Yeah, you got to be careful here. You get into philosophy, and we could talk about that stuff for years.
Right. With our classes, with some of our classes anyway, and I didn't do it in our mini course because, we're just trying to be so condensed. And I think it was a mistake. So in our longer courses, what we've done is we start with what went really well for you this week and what went really badly for you this week. So that way I learn, what people are struggling with, and also, what's going really well for them. And, both of those questions, I think, give people an opportunity to brag if they want to, and to complain if they want to. And, we don't really give people enough space to do that in the world today. And I did that in our long class. I didn't do that in our mini course, but I think I'm going to add that back in because it really changes the tone. And I get a lot of good information from that about what's bugging people, about, maybe these buttons are hard to see, or some goofy little thing that I would never find out unless I ask.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never, for me, my classes, I think I'm going to have to start instituting that. What did you struggle with? Because I'm always the beginning of every week is weekend wins. What was your weekend win? What did you?
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Win? But if you start focusing on really what went poorly that's what derails people. You know what I mean? Like that's really what ruins everything. Like if all we did was focus on the good, we'd never get anything done because something bad would be, in the way. Something bad's always going to be stopping you.
Yeah. So. But you can do both if you've got 6 people, you can do both in 10 minutes. What went really well for you, what went really badly for you this week. And, usually it's, unless you get into a really long argument, and sometimes that's worth it, about whatever, something leads to a longer discussion. But you always have the option to table that as a excellent facilitator, such as yourself. So.
True that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So what else, what is your experience with icebreakers? As far as good, bad, and ugly. How about a bad, speaking of a bad, let's talk about some bad icebreakers. Have you guys seen any terrible ones?
I think if it's your first meeting and you ask people something that is too much, tell me your life story. They don't know where to start. They don't know how much time to take. Somebody's going to take 20 minutes. Somebody's going to take a minute and a half. So I think the mistakes that people could make with an icebreaker is asking too much and not being specific enough about what kind of answers you're looking for. If you can tell people, we're going to take 10 minutes to do an icebreaker. So I want everybody to spend 2 minutes telling me this, so if you can be super specific, that puts a fence around it. It doesn't take up your whole meeting, and it doesn't intimidate people to the point where they're just paralyzed by the tell me the worst thing that happened to you as a child and I don't even know your middle name, and then you get the deer in the headlights for solid seconds and you get that awkward silence, and that's what everybody's trying to avoid.
Nice. How about you, John? Any troubling icebreakers?
You need to understand your audience, even if it's one person. Because in some people's background that didn't grow up completely in the States, you say, how are you doing? Or where are you from? They think you want to know how they've done all day long, and where are they from means God knows where. I mean, it's not specific enough, but you don't want to be so specific as to become I don't know. It's a fine line to walk, but you need to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
Being too specific can be off-putting to some people.
Absolutely. I mean, you can sound like an interrogator, right? Like if you're like, but where are you really from? But where's your mom from? Where's your dad from? Like, right. Yeah, it can definitely turn into too much too fast.
Well, and I heard actually recently that there are times and places where that question is considered to be really offensive and intrusive. Where are you really from? Because your accent doesn't sound right for that. You're not really from there, or it can be really, really off-putting, and people don't intend that. But I think some people can take it that way, and some people you can take any question. If your intention is bad, it's going to show, So icebreakers, I think, as long as they are fun and light and not too serious, and you let people off the hook if they don't want to participate, just like you did with John, you want to make sure that you're making a safe environment for everybody to participate. You don't want to add to the anxiety. That's exactly counter to what you're trying to do, is make people feel comfortable with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, and so to that end, like what would be some opening statements? Like if you were just to meet your first class, is there something that you usually say as far as like safe space and, no judgment, or, what are kind of the ground rules that you lay out usually?
Right. In first class on Zoom, what you got 3 or 4 people, or 5 or 10 or 30 or what?
We'll say 5. We'll say less than 20. Less than 10, really. So about 5, 10.
Okay. I try to lay that out before the first meeting, in an email so that people know, they come prepared. Here's the agenda. If I'm going to do an icebreaker, I'll let people know what the icebreaker is going to be, so it won't be sprung on them. And so I try to do that in an agenda to make people feel comfortable, and then also let them know, here are some recordings of past classes like this that we've done, or past meetings like this that we've done, so that they can kind of familiarize themselves. Or our podcast, of course. Anybody who's listened to our podcast kind of has a feel for the way we work, and feel comfortable with us off the bat. So I think if you publish something and you can send them an example of, here's what we're going to do and this is how it's going to go, they'll feel a whole lot more comfortable if they've kind of pre-rehearsed it in their head.
His question sparks.
Yeah.
Do you remember when my business school team couldn't get along?
Yeah.
And we hired you to fix it?
Yeah, I remember that.
That process that you went through, if you could lay that out for him, because, what you did took a while, but you could probably explain it pretty quickly.
Right. But what we had...
Because when we got together with you, it was all fait accompli.
Right.
Because you did all the work behind the scenes.
Yeah. So what we had was a group of 6 people. It was 6 to begin with, that had a lot of fear, about working together, because they all thought that everybody else was going to torpedo the project, or that things weren't going to go the way they wanted to, or that they weren't going to get the grade they wanted, or whatever, because they had to work as a group, and they'd all had bad experiences in working as a group.
Because we all knew the only person you could rely on was yourself.
Right. So I actually interviewed each person individually and found out, what are you afraid of? And what do you want to have happen? What would be the ideal way for this group to work together? And, those 2 questions, when I got into the room, I wrote down the answers to those 2 questions. It was pretty much synonymous for every single person, but they couldn't talk to each other about what are you afraid of? But they could talk to a neutral third party about what are you afraid of. And I think sometimes if you have a group of people that runs into, right now we're really, really polarized politically and things like that. So you can't talk to a Republican, or you can't talk to a Democrat, or you can't talk to somebody who's on the opposite side, but you could talk to a neutral third party and say, what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid, that the socialists are going to overrun the place, or I'm afraid that whatever you're afraid of, you can tell that to a third party that you couldn't tell to the enemy, And
it seems like if all these people are if you got 5 people in a class, that means they're all about the same place, and you're going to start them all about the same level and work them up. And if you've done this already, then one of them might see something the others don't and be able to help you explain it.
Right. But the situation that John was talking about is where you actually had a history of conflict, which is different than just walking in plain off the street, and you don't trust people because you don't trust people in general. That's different than, I don't trust these people because they're going to try and take over this project and make it something that I don't want it to be. So if you've got that, it depends on where you're starting from. And I think most of the meetings that we start with are the cold start as opposed to the hostile start. So we don't necessarily have to do a lot of pre-work, but it's really nice to have that ahead of time. If you can set as much groundwork as you can and set as much expectation and everything else as you can.
Yeah, I would say that the preliminary to the first meeting on Zoom would be a good place to do some of that.
Yeah. Yep.
A phone call, or however you talk with them to start with. Do they call you? They probably call you, or they email you, right?
Oh, for your group?
Yeah, for Mickey. Yeah. He asked a question we're trying to answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I forgot the question entirely. I'm sorry.
In my specific situation,
yeah,
there's not a ton of pre-frame. There really isn't. I don't really set them up. I just say, come on Tuesday at 9 o'clock, be ready for a Zoom. Don't worry, everything will be explained.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you talk to them, or is that an email transaction, or?
It's usually text or Facebook Messenger. So it's usually through messages.
I'm a huge fan of checklists, so I like to send a checklist before people come to the first meeting, and just say, make sure your microphone works, make sure you're and everything else. And here's the agenda of what we're going to be talking about. Just so that you're not spending the first 10 minutes trying to figure out how to use Zoom and trying to figure out exactly what it is we're doing here. But I'm more of an agenda person, I guess. And your people are probably culturally a little bit different. They want everything to be a little more spontaneous and fun.
It's hit or miss. I mean, I think more front end work would help. I think if I had an email, like a welcome email, I don't think that would hurt. I send out a welcome package that they hopefully get before the first Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't talk about what to do at the Zoom meeting. It does talk about the onboarding tasks.
Yeah.
And I lay those out during the first week. The first week, I don't expect them to study any math or English. The first week is all mindset and get your stuff together, right?
Yeah.
Because you need a plan. Like, that's the biggest thing that my students need, and probably anybody who's learning anything, they need a plan to make sure that they're consistent. Because consistency is what builds skills. It's never going to be an instant effort that suddenly now you can play guitar, right? Like, I played guitar all Sunday and now I'm a pro. Like, it's never going to work like that.
Yeah.
It's always going to be 20 minutes a day for the next 8 years, right? And then you're going to be halfway decent. And, that's not what anybody wants to hear. Everybody's looking for that quick fix.
Yeah.
But I think as a teacher or an instructor or someone who provides value to someone else, you have to make these tried and true things clear, that it's true. You have to put in effort. And that's what I spend my first week doing. I'm not so hung up on Zoom, because with my Zoom calls, I can fill those with practice problems. I can do ASVAB questions all day long. Yeah. I could do probably 3 hours. If they're willing to sit through 3 hours of instruction, I could do that. But I try to keep it at an hour so that they gain the most possible skill. And then I tell them to focus in on 2 or 3 things that were covered for the day.
Yeah.
That's really how it goes down.
Yeah, no, I like that. And, I think in most cases, the people that are listening to the podcast are going to be in a sales or a marketing situation where they are wanting to do a webinar to demonstrate their product or whatever and stuff. And I still think an icebreaker is fantastic, because that changes the nature of the call from a sales presentation to a participatory event, and gets everybody to get to know everybody else, makes them feel comfortable asking questions, makes them feel comfortable expressing disbelief or doubt, whenever it's appropriate to do that, and that kind of thing, and getting through problem solving, which is really what sales is in a business to business or an aviation or an education situation, is really problem solving. So, yeah. And I know you do some webinars and some consultations where you do groups of people, to try and get them into your course. And I think a lot of us are in that situation. I think an icebreaker is perfect for that scenario, even though everybody wants to launch into the material. That's not the most efficient way to work.
Or you could even fake a problem with Zoom. You could just start talking, say, oops, and then click the microphone and say, I asked you guys to be prepared. Now here I am, forgot to click the microphone on.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we don't have to make it up. It'll happen.
Yeah, today I had gremlins in my internet. So I disappeared for like 80 seconds, right? And I'm like on my phone getting ready to message everybody. And then I look up and they're all right there. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys are still here. And they all just laughed and laughed. They were like, this guy is ridiculous. I wasn't sure, I figured 80 seconds, man. They were like, it's math. You know, it's not something that you want to stick around and a good time. So I was over the moon when all of my students were still on the same Zoom call, which I didn't think was going to be the case. I thought
wow, that's doing something right when they'll stick around and do more math with you.
Oh yeah. God, no, yesterday I had a phone call with my unit, right? All of the leadership was on the line. Mm-hmm. And yeah, after the first, all right, guys, well, I think that wraps it up. Boom, I was that was it. Because, you know, you don't want to, if you're not into what they're talking about, you'll disengage the first opportunity you get. So my name is Mickey Gaminol with ASVAB Domination and Gaminol Tutors on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. If you know anybody who's going into the military, tell them look me up, Gaminol Tutors.
Paula Williams, ABCI. We help aviation companies sell more of their products and services.
John Williams, also ABCI, and we help with business solutions when and if they decide they want assistance.